Welcome to You Are Not Alone. I am spiritual medium Erica Gabriel. This show is intended to bring expansion, understanding, and growth on our spiritual paths and journeys. This is a safe place to explore all things spiritual and beyond. Please remember, I am not a licensed therapist or medical doctor. Seek immediate professional help if you need mental health or physical health support. Hello, friends, and welcome to You Are Not Alone. I'm spiritual medium Erica Gabriel. I am so excited that you're listening to this podcast, that you're hanging with me today. I am really excited about the guest that I have on, and I'm blown away and honored and thrilled to have him here. I'm going to tell you who it is right now. It's Josh Siegel. He is an amazing, world-renowned, super respected, incredible numerologist, and I am thrilled he agreed to do this show. I'll tell you a little backstory. So I truly, and I don't know my exact age, but I really think I may have been 21. Like, I feel like I was 21 when I keep asking, when was it? And I got a reading from Josh in Los Angeles at a learning annex next to the Bodhi Tree bookstore, which is no longer there, which is so sad. But anyway, I got a reading from Josh, and it blew my mind. He literally blew my mind. I could not believe the reading that I got. He took my birthday, my full name, and he gave me a full, I think it was an hour, I think it was an hour-long numerology reading. And he literally cut to the exact details and the heart of what was happening in my life at the time, what to look for in the year ahead. I mean, specifics that were mind-blowing. And I've never, ever, ever forgot that reading. I don't know a lot about numerology and how it works, but whenever I'm ever asked about numerology, I'm like, I think numerology is mind-blowing, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was 21 years old, I got a reading from a man named Josh Siegel, and he blew my freaking mind, and he's amazing. So recently, people have been writing me, Erica, have a numerologist on your show. Tell us about numerology. What do you know about numerology? And in my mind, I'm like, I know absolutely freaking nothing, but I know someone who does. And I called out Josh on Instagram, tagged him like crazy, and said, is there any way you'd come on my show? And he's so cool, wrote me back, was like, yeah, cool, let's do it. So I'm thrilled to have him. Josh, he has been featured all over in magazines, on the news. He was featured in Goop Health, and he's an amazing person, and he's so nice to do this podcast. I know it's early in Los Angeles right now. Josh, welcome to You Are Not Alone. Thank you for being here. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How's it going there in Los Angeles right now? How are you?
Well, there's no riots, so that's a good thing.
That's a plus.
Yeah, that's a
plus. Where are you in LA? Where do you live exactly? I mean, you don't have to give me your address. I don't need that. But like, what part are you in?
I'm in West Hollywood.
That's my old stomping ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nice. Cool. So tell us, I know it's such a vast thing and it's so amazing what you do. I think some people have heard of numerology and some people have literally never heard of it, don't understand it, don't know if it's real. What would you say? I know you do a super advanced form of numerology, which unlocks hidden codes in people's lives. Can you tell us, like, what is numerology to you?
Well, first of all, let me give you a little bit of background on me and why I'm a little bit unique in this field. I didn't come from a particularly spiritual and certainly not a new age family. I was adopted. My mother was a professor at UCLA, and my father was the director of the National Labor Relations Board in California. These were highly educated, particularly my mother, deeply skeptically minded, analytical types. So I wasn't this kind of person who simply believed something because I read it in a book. However, it turns out that biologically, and I met my birth parents when I was 18 and 19 respectively, were sort of hippie musicians in the 60s, right? So,
oh, wow. So you found them.
Yeah. And they were essentially sort of intuitive creative types. So biologically, I have this maybe a predisposition to kind of look at things a little bit more intuitively, right brained. But yet my upbringing was, you do not take things at face value. Things should be proven, approach things with healthy skepticism, etc. So what happened to me is that I just had this feeling inside of me that life and what I was experiencing was not all that was there. I felt that there was more to life than what I was seeing. And that took me on a journey to search for deeper answers in life. But I wasn't going to do it in a sort of, I talked to someone and they told me here are the answers, or I read this in the book. I had to do some research and I had to use a discriminating mind and see if I could track down what might be some kind of answer to why we're here, right? This age old question. And
right. Why are we here? What are we doing here? Yes.
What are we doing here? Is this all some giant mistake
Totally.
or some random event?
That's like where I was when I met you, Josh, like 21, just like digging through the halls of Bodhi Tree Bookstore. And then like I bump into you. I just think that's so interesting. Yes. Cool.
Those things are, somewhat serendipitous, right? And when you meet somebody at a time in your life when you're ready to receive something more, something to take you to the next level on your journey.
Yeah.
And, I still consider myself a skeptic. And what I mean by skeptic, I mean a real skeptic, which means that I don't poo-poo things or have bias against something without investigating and see its validity, which is, what I call pseudo skeptics engage in today. There's an old saying, to those that believe, right? No evidence is required. And those that disbelieve, no evidence will suffice. Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, as I went through this journey, to make a long story short as fast as I can, I found
Don't rush. Please don't rush. We have time. Don't rush. Don't rush.
That scene in Airplane where they're like, the guys like hanging themselves, pouring gas on themselves.
Yeah, totally.
Like a match, like enough already.
Totally. No, go. Like, please, because what's going to happen is if you don't answer it now, my DMs are going to be filled. Like, can you ask Josh this? Can you ask Josh that? So please take your time. But yes, go on.
Essentially, what I found is that as I studied, every tradition and every, for example, ancient mystical knowledge, if you will, or spiritual knowledge in different traditions, religion itself, right? Comparative religion, mythology. A friend of my mother's was a gentleman by the name of Joseph Campbell, who wrote all these amazing books on mythology.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Joseph Campbell. Yes.
And we had a lot of luminaries in the home. And as I started to kind of see if I could find a continuous thread through all of these traditions, that, there were writings and, traditions and folklore and what we would call stories and myth that existed across the world. And yet they all had these sort of similar stories and similar truths being imparted, sometimes written in a kind of metaphorical language and an allegory, right? And as I started to look at all these things, I realized that there was kind of a secret code that seemed to be the same, a secret code, a numerical code, a usage of numbers to describe the universe, life, the workings of the mind of the universe. And I know that sounds kind of heavy and sort of out there, and what does that mean? However, the information that was there is, in some respects, very much a part of history. I didn't have to make this up. Scholars have written about this, right? It's written in books of people who studied ancient mystery traditions. And as you start to delve into this, you start to realize that the ancient mind had an understanding of the world around it by viewing the sun, moon, and the stars and the seasons. And they started to categorize things and started seeing how the world worked, the universe worked. And they seemed to have a language of numbers. And this was universal. And I mean, from the ancient teachings of India to the Egyptians, to the Persians, to the Hebrews, to the Romans, to the Greeks, to early Christianity. And it was a universal language of numbers. And I said, my God, what are the chances that these numbers are used in the same way to describe these deeper meanings, these secret workings of the world around us? And that's what got me so interested in numerology, because numerology is essentially the study of the numeric patterns of a human being, right? the code to why they are the way they are. I mean, I'm looking right now at my computer, and as I'm talking, there are these cycles, right? These waveforms that are coming up, from this podcast software, right? Those waveforms can be measured in cycles with numbers. Like everything has a vibratory aspect to it. Literally, as I'm talking, I'm looking at it. And all things have their number or vibrate to a certain frequency of some sort. Carl Jung, the great 20th century, early 20th century, late 19th century godfather of psychoanalytics, but also he was kind of a mystic in his own right, said that man didn't discover numbers or create numbers. They discovered what was already there. It was sort of like they existed, right, as this language form or this concept. And ultimately, I came to become fascinated with numbers and obsessed with how far can you decode or understand a human being, their psychology, their predisposition to lessons and issues in their life, timings of certain events that happen under certain numbers. How far can you go with it? Can you prove it? Can it work? Can you substantiate it to a certain level? Right? Because remember, it's me we're talking about. I wasn't simply going to accept it unless it could work. It took me 23 years and over 20,000 sessions. But now I can honestly say, and I'm not an infallible computer, but I can honestly say that the system indeed does work. And without getting any feedback from a person, just using their full name at birth and their birth date, I'm able to ascertain some pretty in-depth things about a person that I shouldn't know about, that in many ways can be transformational knowledge that can in some cases change a person's life.
It's unbelievable. I'm like, and I'm living proof. I will never forget the things you have told me, 20 years ago, or about 20 years ago, just using my name and my birthday. Unbelievable. So you discovered this code, you found the code, you studied it, you devoted your life to it. And where do you learn that code? Did you kind of create your own system, or did you study a format? Like, how did that work? How did you come to kind of pull it together so you were able to do this for someone else?
Well, first of all, I read every single book ever written on the subject that I could find, out of print, right? Every author seemed to have a different formula and sometimes different definition or different way of analyzing these numbers in the chart, the code. And what I found is that some information, I applied, sort of my family background, discriminating mind. Some of the information presented from some authors turned out to be not true, that it didn't stand up to my vigorous testing, right? Mm-hmm. Other things I found to be at times fascinating, that it did seem to resonate with people. I tested this damn thing.
Right.
I literally would do free sessions and I'd ask them questions. And I mean, this was trial and error, just like any other system that you would test. And after years and years and thousands of sessions, right, I started to see how these things manifested, right? I started to see, I would call them case studies. If you saw certain numbers in the chart, did it correlate to certain experiences? Yes or no? How often? And what modified it, right? If you had this other number, would that change it? I mean, these are painstaking research and case studies. And over years and years and thousands of sessions, I started to uncover my own view or my own system based on what I had found from others, what I read from others in my own research, and it started to coalesce in my own system.
Wow. What did your parents think? What did they think of all that? Like, were they like, wow, this is really cool? Or were they feeling super skeptical? Blah, blah. Skeptical.
Blah, blah, skeptical would be correct.
Yeah.
So my mother, I was adopted when I was just a newborn infant. And they were quite old when they adopted me. My mother's family escaped from Nazi Germany in the late 30s. Mm-hmm. And it's curious because her last name was Einstein.
Wow.
And there was always some speculation that there might be some relation there. And actually, one year I did some research on the internet, and someone in the Einstein family did a family tree that proved conclusively she was indeed a descendant of Albert Einstein.
Oh, fantastic. That's amazing.
Right. So when people would say, you're no Einstein, she was like, as a matter of fact, I am.
Yeah, I'm literally an Einstein. Thank you. Yeah.
And she, was kind of stereotypically an Einsteinian kind of mind. She never really understood it. She passed in November of 2017 at 93. and she was sharp as a tack to the very end. She had difficulties with it. She never truly, and it was a source of a wound for me because I had done all this really fascinating work, and I think I had shown that there was validity to the system, but my mother, never could really understand it. It just didn't seem plausible to her how this could work.
Okay.
And I mean, I understood, at some point forgave her towards the end. But I would say in the last few years of her life, she started to become more acceptable of it to a certain degree. She'd see me on TV from time to time. I think she saw me on Diane Sawyer's NewsHour, which she found. I remember talking to her. And she said, "That's very credible NewsHour of Diane Sawyer." I think she found that. Like I couldn't be too much of a moron to be on Diane Sawyer.
Yeah. Right. That's fantastic. Yes. Totally.
I did a History Channel show. I think she found History Channel a little bit less nauseating than other networks, at the time. And so I think she started to think, what's going on here? He's getting some attention, but I just don't think she fully understood it. My father, I remember I tell this story about my father one day sitting at the dinner table, and my dad asked me what I was up to. And I said, I've been studying Jewish mysticism. I came from a Jewish family, Kabbalah.
Right. Kabbalah, exactly.
Yeah. And I said, I was really fascinated with Kabbalah. And he said, oh, that's great. Well, how about getting a job-Allah? Okay, kid?
Totally. He's like, that's lovely now. Yeah.
Old Jews they're like, get a job, pay the bills. This is all fancy, interesting stuff, but they're both gone now, and
rush to get a job. So my family's Jewish as well. My dad and his whole family are Jewish. My mom's actually Swedish, but it was like the sooner you get work, the better. It's like rush through school, rush as much as you can, be as smart as possible, and get a job. Absolutely.
Right. Practical people. And look, they were great providers. They loved me. They wanted me the best of me. They never quite understood what I was doing. And you know what? It's interesting. In my numerology chart, there is if you want to call it lesson there, or wound involving acceptance, right? I wasn't totally accepted. And it's a wound that I've had to heal and work and look at and work at. Right. And there's a lot of people out there who grew up in an environment. And I want to talk about that this code, it sounds like this mathematical formula thing, and it's this intellectual kind of experience with me. No, I actually am very much into transformational work that is, somewhat psychological. And I've struggled with my own wounds in life. I've struggled through relationships. I've struggled through my own self-love and self-acceptance issues. And getting a reading or session with me is not some mathematical formula being broken down to you in an intellectual way. It's actually a journey into healing. I really consider the work that I do to be first and foremost healing work, and illuminating things and helping you to accept and love parts of yourself that may not have been supported, and helping you to awaken to what I call your higher purpose, which I think is the most important discovery I've ever made, is the higher purpose in the chart.
Why you're here. And that's what you sought out to do, Josh, right? Yeah. So like in the beginning of this podcast, you're saying like, why are we here? I got to figure this out. And what you're saying is part of what you've unlocked is this ability to assist people in finding that answer. And that is so beautiful. Within the code that you've discovered and that you've, tried and true for all these years, you feel like you can find and assist someone in finding their soul's purpose. Is that right?
Yeah, I am absolutely certain I can, because I've done it, for 23 years.
Totally. First of all, I am dying to get a reading. How rad is that to get one and then 20 years later to have another? Like, that's awesome. I'm dying to get a reading. I'm so excited, Josh.
I mean, it's pretty special to reconnect to a client from that long ago, because I have to say that was, towards the beginning of I would say that my level of understanding of the system has progressed, exponentially since 20 years ago. So it would be quite an interesting experience for you probably to get another session 20 years later.
I'm so excited. Well, let me tell you, 20 years ago, you were crushing it. And again, it may have been 19 years ago, but like around that time, very early 20s for me. Well, let me tell you, even when you were starting out, you were crushing it. You were awesome. And I never forgot that. So I want to ask you something I get asked so much, and I really want to know if you know. People ask me, Erica, what does it mean when I always look at the clock and see 1:11? 222, 333, 555, 1212, 1313, 1414. What does it mean when we keep seeing these reoccurring numbers in our life, these sequential numbers? For me, when I was younger, I was terrified from societal conditioning of the number 666. And when I was 16 years old, I went to get my license.
Right.
And my license was something, 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 666, which was assigned to me for life. You know, your license number is assigned to you for life.
Right.
And it's like these reoccurring numbers. People ask me a lot. I used to think 111 meant an angel, 222 meant this, 333 meant that. And now I've come to the awareness that it's more spirit reaching out to you, telling you, you know, that they're with you and to connect with you. But I'm dying to know, what is your perspective on that? Oh, 911 too. People see 911 a lot and they always ask me about that.
Sure. So this is, extremely common. If I had a nickel for every single time someone told me that they saw numbers in their life reoccurring, I could probably end the national debt. The most common series of numbers is 1111, or in this case, 111. The reason being is that the number 11 is kind of an indicator, or they call it the messenger number, and it signifies to some degree breaking out of the matrix. Now, what I mean the matrix is that, okay, so there's a universal matrix that is like, for example, society all kind of living in a kind of like an illusion state where, we watch TV and commercials and we're bombarded with marketing and advertising, and we're taught to believe that money and fame that's the key to happiness, and looking perfect and things of this sort. That's sort of a matrix right there.
Yeah.
Right. We watch romantic movies and we think that love is going to turn out that way. And I can tell you, for God's sakes, it doesn't necessarily. And that isn't to say that we can't have amazing things in our life. It's just that there is a matrix or an illusory kind of conditioning that in society will bring us. And I think that's pretty well substantiated. Well, we also have our own little matrix. And one of the things that I've discovered relative to the higher purpose in someone's numerology chart is that in order to get to the higher purpose, there does have to be this sort of awakening out of the conditioning of your environment growing up. Okay. This is the conditioning of the family dynamic, or what psychologists call the formative stages of development when you are a child and you are, predestined seemingly to go through certain lessons and issues and difficulties, even in the best of families, that create a kind of a wound or a predisposition to see yourself a certain way, or a distortion, right? And then a belief system comes from that. And then it gets so ingrained in you that later on in life, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, or whenever I get, to a certain level of success, it gets sabotaged, or, someone's going to leave me, no matter. And these are things that we carry within ourselves, right?
So, belief system. Yeah. Our belief system, that whole structure that is kind of built up. Yeah. Agreements. Yep.
Agreement. And these things are part of the work I do, is breaking open those, false or distorted belief systems. It's sort of breaking the code, right? The code is meant to be broken. And then what gets revealed is the higher purpose and your true self that's been not supported, right? Well, the number 11 is indicative of somebody having awakenings, insights, and revelations, that they're ready to move out of living in their own bubble and their own false belief systems, as well as maybe the belief systems of society around us that are also matrixy, right? That give us a distorted view. 11 is, are you ready to shift? Are you ready to awaken out of, whether it be cultural conditioning or childhood conditioning? Are you ready to see things in a new light? And that's why the number is seen so much, because it's a representation of someone awakening out of their old ways of thinking, right? And interestingly enough, if you think about 222 or 44 or 55 or 66, they're all multiples of 11, aren't they?
Oh, shit. Well, for fuck's sake. Yeah.
It seems like you're quoting from the Bhagavad Gita there, right? For fuck's sake, yes.
Well, for fuck's sake. I'm like, that makes it, the reason why that's tripping me out is because, like I said, it came to my awareness, Erica, those numbers don't each mean something. It's spirit. It's acknowledging spirit is here. You're not alone. Spirit's around you. Like, drop it in, kind of that spirit connection. That's what I've been told. It's not that 222 means one thing or 333 means one thing. And so you're validating that, and by saying it's all 11, babe.
Right. They're all multiples of 11, but now
Right.
they all have something in common that they are. They're all messages, if you will. However, there are some specific characteristics of a 2, of a 3, of a 4 that may be relevant to a person's life. For example, not in all cases, in some particular cases, numbers that a person is seeing are reflected in their chart. Okay. So it could be a number that is, they're here to learn, a number that is a challenge number in their chart, and they're seeing it to remind themselves. It's an unconscious thing. There was a movie that came out in 2007 with Jim Carrey called The Number 23, where it's actually a supernatural thriller, and instead of a comedy of all things, and he's haunted by this number 23, and it's everywhere he goes, and it's a sort of scary sort of thing. It's like where he's starting to have a meltdown. It's funny, the DVD has special features on it. Back then they were doing a lot more, high end and expensive special features on DVDs. And so they interviewed me for like 9 minutes, and I talked about people seeing numbers, right? And I mentioned 1111. And I said that's the most common thing. Now, they shot that with me before the movie came out. It was released. And they spliced scenes from the film in what I said. And there's a scene, apparently, which of course I had no idea this would be the case,
right,
where Jim Carrey wakes up in the middle of the night and he looks at the clock. It's 11:11.
Wow.
And they spliced it in, and it looked like that was, organized together, and it wasn't. It was just a weird synchronicity, right?
Yeah.
These numbers will show up in your life at different times when there's maybe something you need to understand. It's not a magical, supernatural event. It's the subconscious mind noticing numbers, because the subconscious mind probably understands this sort of symbolic meaning of these numbers, where your conscious mind's like, these are just a series of numbers I'm seeing. But remember what Carl Jung said, that these numbers already existed. It's kind of in the recesses of our subconscious minds. We know what they mean on a deeper level. It's just that it's hard to understand it from a conscious aspect.
Totally. Yes. I'm feeling what you're putting out. It's our awareness to these numbers. Our subconscious is matching with the awareness of the number. That makes so much sense.
Correct.
Does 666 have a particular meaning?
So many years ago, I was visiting Ojai here in California, and I went to the Theosophical Society, which is I guess it's been around since the 1800s. I guess you call them a philosophical, mystical group. And they had a little bookstore there, and I found a book written in the early 1900s from some mystic who purported to have decoded revelations using some mystical form of numerology of some sort. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what this author said. He said that the revelations was written in what I guess referred to as Greek numerology, right? Mm-hmm. And he said that there was a code to the numbers. Actually, it was 11122 all the way up to 999. 1,000. And he said in particular that the numbers 666, 777, and 888 were the most important. And here's what he found, that in Greek numerology, the word Jesus equaled 888. And the word staros, which means cross, equaled 777. And the words something to the effect of he friend meant beast mind was equaled 666. And then there was a diagram of a human form, and 888 was sort of put at the head area, and 77 sort of at the chest. And then I guess you would call it in Eastern mysticism, the lower chakra was at 666, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And just to sum up what the concept is that we all have a beast mind, meaning all human beings have the ability to, be selfish, greedy, hurtful, even violent, decadent, strive for power and aggrandizement. Right? These are things associated with the lower aspect of our minds,
yes.
the beast mind, right? And then all of us also have a divine essence in us, and a higher consciousness, if you will, spoken eloquently in all these ancient manuscripts and writings, the world over for thousands of years, right? They speak about this higher self, right? The spiritual self. And this is symbolized by the 888. or in this case, the allegory of Jesus being sort of the divine mind, right? And then 777, staros, meant cross, meaning that we're hanging in a balance on this cross. We can be pulled down into our lower selves,
Yes.
or we can reach above
Yeah.
into unselfishness, love, caring for others, and spiritual thoughts and the divine.
Mm.
And that the temptation of the 666 is there.
Mm.
It is up to us as we sacrifice our lower selves and our lower selfish desires to gain a higher consciousness. In other words, it wasn't the beast being a particular being. It is us.
It's us.
It is us. And
It's our shadow. It's our
Mhm.
shadow self. It is so, I feel like I'm like in meditation as I'm listening to you talk. And I keep on, sometimes when I'm meditating, I need to draw and I keep drawing. When I asked you about 666, I started drawing over and over again the yin and yang symbol, yin and yang, right? Balance. And like, that's what you're describing, that 666. And 777 is my absolute favorite number. Always has been 777.
Yeah. Well,
And then 666 has always been kind of assigned to me as a dark Scorpio.
right. No,
But
listen, you really should be in a state of mind where, and sometimes I see this in the quote unquote new age community,
yes.
that people aren't dealing with their actual shadow self or
Yes. It's called toxic positivity. It drives me insane. So much of spiritual work is delving into shadow
correct.
because I just said something today about that. The darkness is so fruitful. It is
Absolutely.
so fruitful. You can come out of that shadow with everything you've ever been looking for, right? It's so fruitful. Reflection, not being afraid of your own shadow. And I love that that's what 666 means. And it's about balance and not being afraid of who you are or what's inside. Although the scariest things I've ever found on the entire earth, and I'm a medium who talks to dead people all day, is in people's own minds. And so tapping into that and finding your path, your truth, your light is it, right? Is it? But I'm so with you. I think there can be so much toxic positivity where it's like, am I not allowed to feel because I have to just be quote positive? That's spirituality. That feels off,
Well, all the mystical traditions talk about, for example, in Hebrew mysticism, they speak about the middle pillar, right? Kabbalah. It's a path of balance. It isn't a path of pure light, right?
Yeah, right.
The way forward is never to, and if you look at some of the writings of what we know about these ancient initiation rituals, which was sort of like a early form of primitive psychology of delving into your dark side and being kind of reborn into your higher spiritual self, there was always some trials and tribulations, right? I read that in ancient Greece, there were some initiations and where one would be sort of buried in a sarcophagus, obviously not to kill you, but for a number of days where you would go into this sort of like dark place, the underworld, and then they would take you out into the sun, and as it was coming up in the morning on the third day. And there was all these ancient mystery traditions had this kind of, face the dark side, your fear, and be reborn and awaken through it. It's the Scorpio, the phoenix rising out of the ashes,
Yes.
right? That's the proper work. And interestingly enough, what I found is you can do that work, and sometimes it's intense, but I really love to put humor in my readings, even when I'm talking about deeper things, tastefully at the right times, because I don't think this work has to be so gnarly. I think we can, I like to disarm people. I like to make it easy. I like to open up a place for them where we can look at some things and find a way forward without, making it so difficult and heavy for people.
Right. It's okay. You're right there. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. It can be authentic and real, and it doesn't have to be this torment.
No, absolutely not.
I totally get that. It's so interesting you're talking about this darkness or dark night. After I fully opened as a medium, I did go through a dark night where I was literally in darkness for 3 days. Like it was a sunny California day, but to me it looked like nighttime. And I'm not exaggerating or just saying that for for a cool story. I mean, I went there, I went there. And I think sometimes, especially in, spirituality or new age, and to be able to assist people in their own healing, right? It's like sometimes you if you're afraid of darkness, or you're afraid of the number 666, or you're afraid of, you're really afraid of the darkness, it's like you're going to have a hard time kind of being able to serve people and assist them in a way. So I think that's for me why I went into that darkest of depths of darkness, because I don't feel afraid, Now, sometimes I still sleep with the light on.
Well, look, you're talking to dead people. That's a whole different.
Well, also that's just Erica. Like Erica is kind of a chicken. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I just like to have the light on. But yeah.
I hear you.
I'd like to tell you something really cool, that this is the way our organic and authentic conversation is coming up, because I want to tell you something cool I remember about the reading you gave me 20 years ago. One of the things that we talked about in the reading you gave me, you told me that I was headed into like my Jesus years. You basically brought up Jesus for me.
That's interesting.
It was wild. And what's so crazy is not long after that is when I got all really delved into this crazy connection that I have with Jesus as a teacher, right? So I'm not a Christian. Everybody knows that I'm not Christian. I'm not this, I'm not that. I embrace all religions, love all religions, and follow, God, right? But have had amazing experiences with Buddha and with Jesus, and I'm very attached to Judaism. But anyway, point being that as I went into that year, I had a complete, an utter, very powerful experience with Jesus. Jesus led me to some understandings and some other teachers, which helped me be brave enough and helped me become a medium, basically.
Wow.
And you decoded that. You literally said to me, "This is your Jesus year." And I thought, Jesus year? I'm like, huh?
Well, I'm trying to understand what I was thinking back then. There is a number called the 33-6.
Yeah, 33.
Right. Now, Christ was said to have died at age 33.
Yeah.
In some of the old books, they referred in numerology, some of the early writers referred to the number 33 as the Christ consciousness number.
Yeah, Christ consciousness.
And so there are people that have the number 33 in their chart. Now, make no mistake, they're not turning water into wine, and walking on water and raising people from the dead, right?
Yes.
At least not that I know of. But it can create a lesson in life where one can be a bit of a victim and a martyr, right? Usually there's some deeper crucifixion of the emotions, if you will, growing up. And later on in life, they can put themselves in compromising situations and be taken for granted for. But ultimately, they can become sort of like we call the teacher of teachers, right? And they can learn to make sure their needs are getting met, at the same time give service and help and, give love to the world around them. And this is, a number that we see sometimes in people who have a story like that, right? Now, there are numerological cycles from year to year that you're under temporarily, right? So for that particular year, you may have been going into a 33.
Yeah.
So yes, you could call it the Jesus year. I mean, a little bit more the Christ consciousness year, to use sort of the old language.
Right. And that's maybe the words you used. It was quite some time ago, but I remember there was a lot of talk about Jesus, the healer, and that is literally what unfolded in that year. I mean, I never forgot it. And we spoke of many other things, but I just think it's interesting because in this conversation, we talked about the 666 and the 777 and revelations. And it just kind of, I was like, oh yeah, we talked about that in my reading.
We did.
Yes.
Wow. That's fascinating.
I know. This is so awesome. I could talk to you all day. But with that, I kind of wanted to talk about the idea of, people always ask me, is there destiny? Is everything pre-planned? Are there accidents? And like that. And I noticed on your website, you talked about that a little bit, saying there are no accidents. And I'm just want to know what you think about that, what you think about destiny as well.
All right. So I can answer this question with a little bit of authority here after 23 years of doing what I've been doing in my case studies. There does seem to be some level of fate or destiny that correlates to events in your early life. Okay. Numerology wouldn't work the way my system works, system I've developed, if there wasn't some level of destiny. In other words, I can see in the chart that there were certain types of lessons, issues, struggles, in your earlier childhood development. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to do that, again, I don't allow people to speak for the first 30 minutes because I'm laying down the information that I see without any input.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if it is an accurate portrayal of certain dynamics in your life, then that does prove to a certain degree that there is some fate or destiny that aligns, that the numbers explains in your life. However, life is an admixture of free will and destiny.
That's exactly what I've come to know as well. Free will
Right.
and destiny. Yes.
Someone I know one time in a statement of misunderstanding of what numerology is, certainly the numerology that I practice, is that when you're given your numbers and that's it, right? This is how he looked at it as, and he was, deeply mistaken. You're given your numbers and then it is up to you to do what you want with them.
Yes.
Right. And I liken it to playing a card game and you're dealt a hand at birth. But baby, you can double down. You can go for the straight flush. You can ask for two cards. You will have a predisposition. You will have certain programming from your childhood, and that's sort of indicative of what I see in the chart. However, the whole purpose of the code is to break the code. And free will is enormously important. Why is it that certain people who have similar types of numbers, one person is flourishing and the other person is sort of rehashing old material all the time? One person decided, I'm going to change this pattern. I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to take responsibility for my life. A proper reading isn't sort of telling people, which sometimes you see in certain types of psychic readings, that everything's sort of like, this is going to happen and that's going to happen.
Yes.
You have no free will. And then people get attached to these outcomes, which I think is very damaging.
I agree. People say, what happens if I don't like something you say? I say, change it. Change it. This is not etched in stone. This is to serve and assist you at this time on your path in your journey. Absolutely.
There are numerous people in the world who are convinced that I've predicted all of these things in their life, probably thousands. And I don't think it's completely true. And the reason being is when I'm looking at potentials, I think I've done somewhere between 20 and 25,000 sessions.
Wow.
I estimate. You start to see how it works, right? And I say, okay, I've seen situations like this before. The cycle that you're coming under tends to bring up or highlight this part of your life. And we already know that you're predisposed to this kind of thing, but you've changed this, right? So, look out for this kind of thing. This kind of thing may happen. And if it does, here's a great way to handle it. Right? Now, I didn't say this was going to happen for sure because I don't know. But one of the things that I do is I go back in time and I ask targeted questions about certain time frames. And it's so fascinating to hear because anyone can talk about the future. It hasn't happened. But if you go back in time and you say, hey, did this kind of thing happen in this time frame? And you hear, oh my God, yes, it did. That's fascinating because it shows that there was an influence of that time. And then, this person's experience seemed to go along with or sort of vibe with the influence at that time. But you never really know because a person's choices changes things. If you work on yourself, if you decide that you don't want to have this toxic relationships, that you don't want to do a job that's not fulfilling you, that you don't want to believe that, anymore, that you can't make good money in your life, you can change those things. And the way forward is actually in the chart. The chart actually gives us the road to integration, the road to finding our core self, the road to actualizing who we really are. And there's many roads to it, right? And there's so much freedom to choice that you have. It's a transformational process for me. It isn't here's your numbers and good luck. For me, it's how do we get there? How far have you gone? Let me see where you're at, and let's see how we can get to the promised land. And so free will is humongous, and don't let anyone tell you any different.
Man, do I agree. And what's so beautiful about that is that we are that powerful in our lives. We can choose to, like you said, work on yourself, forgive, right? Unlock the chains and the locks from the past. We can do all kinds of amazing things for ourselves in our lives, right? Just as you're saying, free will, you choose.
I have case studies. I have real life examples. I can assure you that almost anything can be transformed and overcome. And I've seen it time and time and time again. Factual evidence of people doing these things. Fact.
Absolutely. That is beautiful. Amazing. So do you believe in law of attraction?
Well, let me say this. When The Secret came out, which was this, what I consider to be a kind of an introductory course to positive thinking,
Uh-huh. Yeah, agree.
I think it was good in a sense that people who have never been exposed to the fact that our thoughts have some effect on our lives,
Yes.
like, really? Yeah, I think it was good in that respect. However, it is not the entire story.
Agree.
Again, from experience, if you're not aware of, what we refer to as the shadow or the hidden influence of your subconscious mind of programming that, as I found, and I think modern psychology substantiates this, if you have programming subconsciously that you are unaware of, and you have not healed and you have not addressed, it will seem like life is happening, faithfully to bring up these issues in your life. When in reality, you're drawing them to you. This part of you is trying to be healed,
Yeah.
and it is attracting this dysfunctional guy in your life, or this toxic job, or this sense of unhappiness or depression.
But you're creating it over and over and over again. And the universe ups the stakes, man, as you get older as well. I would
Oh,
truly
sure.
believe that.
Oh, trust me. And I've experienced it myself.
Me too.
And I've also been in psychotherapy. I've done some of the which I'm a proponent of, which is somatic therapy and EMDR, and things like this that I think can heal trauma and other things. But if you're not aware of these things, you will be what I would refer to as victim of circumstances in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what kind of positive thinking you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're not confronting the real issues, it can only go so far.
Yeah. And that kind of goes with that toxic positivity. Anything can be fake, but to truly align with that energy and align with the energy of the very thing that you're going for or working towards, that's key. And if you can't align with that energy, there's something blocking you, and finding out what's blocking you, that is the shadow work. So don't be afraid, because that will unlock it, right?
And I think shadow work is the most positive thing in the world. I think it's an extremely positive thing.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That will unlock it if you look within the shadow. Sometimes the shadow is the very thing that's blocking you. And sometimes the fear of the shadow is worse than the actual shadow.
That is correct.
Right? Yes. So go in and you will find what is blocking you. And then you can feel that vibration and you can align with the very thing that you want. And that's the true law of attraction. It's not just going, oh, I wish I had $1 million. That's not it.
No, and another thing, I found it a little too materialistic for my The Secret for my
right. I think The Secret was lovely for collective consciousness. I do, yeah. But yes, the check for the $1 million and stuff. But yes, it was wonderful, the collective consciousness. And so you're saying yay to law of attraction, but it's true deep law of attraction is what we're kind of talking about.
Right. If you're doing what you're meant to be doing to fulfill the holistic, your whole self, right? And you're doing what you love, the money will come, and you'll attract abundance in your life, right? There isn't anything wonderful about attracting a lot of money in your life and being miserable, unhappy, depressed, and having bad health.
Correct. Like look at how many quote celebrities or stars we see that are having a terrible time. It's like thinking, oh, they have it all. How could they be sad, right? Because it doesn't matter. You have to work with the own spirit, the own self.
Oh, trust me, I know these things.
I do trust you, Josh. I do. I really do. Oh my gosh, Josh, I am so excited to get a reading with you. I can't stand it. So tell everyone, first of all, how do they find you on social media? How do they book a session? Every single person that hears this is going to want to get a session. This is so powerful and so incredible. I had one session with you. I've been carrying it with me for 20 years. I'm ready for my second session. I know everyone's going to want to book one with you. I know I'm going to get off the phone with you and book one. How do we book with you? How do we connect with you? And what is your social media?
So my Instagram is at Numerology Josh. My website is joshcode, JOSHCODE, joshcode.com. And on the joshcode.com website, you can book a session. There's a really great software program called Acuity that I use. You can book your own session, the time, how you like to receive it, FaceTime, phone, Skype, what have you, nice. And schedules it for everybody and gives you a reminder. It's a really great software because I don't like spending time booking sessions with people. It's not my fun thing. But it does it really, really well. It's very easy, and it handles all that information, and you can book your session.
Good. And do you have some availability?
Yeah, look, some days more than others,
Okay.
but I have availability here and there certainly, and person has got to set aside at least an hour because the website says for a 1 hour session they rarely end in exactly 1 hour. Just letting people know, and I don't charge for the extra time. It's just I need some extra time. A human being's life has a lot of facets to it, and you need enough time to do it. So I would, if someone is going to in their day schedule about an hour and 15 minutes just in case.
This is awesome. You guys go to Josh's website, book your session, follow him on social. Josh, I'm so grateful that you did this. I feel so thrilled to connect with you and hear all this powerful information and your story. I really can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
You know what? It's my pleasure, and to reconnect to you after 20 years is kind of a treat as well. It's kind of mind-boggling. It also reminds me how old I am, but that's all right.
Yeah, right. Well, it's so funny because now, I feel like everything we do, people take pictures. Let's take a picture. Let's take a picture. But I didn't have a camera with me, but I would give anything for a picture of what we looked like on that day. It would be so rad. Oh my God. All right, friends. Well, this has been an awesome, amazing, incredible episode. I'm thrilled to have Josh. Thank you guys so much for listening. It's my greatest honor to bring forward these amazing teachers and healers and motivators and manifestors and numerology Josh, right? So he's his own section. He's his own special thing. But I'm so glad you got to hang with us today, guys, and hear all of this powerful and really sacred information that Josh brings forward. If you guys get nothing else, from tuning into these podcasts, please know you are truly, truly not alone. Not only are your angels and your guides with you, but there's a lot of people out there that are putting out positive energy, love, and light into the universe to continuously send you love. Know the universe is supporting you. And truly, from the bottom of my heart, so am I. You are never, ever alone. I'm sending everyone love. Many, many blessings. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and please follow and connect with Josh Siegel. God bless you guys.